Okay. Welcome everybody to the Development Metrics Working Group. As always, we will go through the persistent links, and with that, I will share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Okay. The first link is MRs per month. Oops. We are roughly halfway through the month, plus 3 days, and I think we're past. I don't know, Christopher, what's the best terminology you like here?
So we have completed 12 work days. Okay. The report runs at almost 12 UTC. It's a little bit easier to figure out, but we've gone through 12 work days. We have 9 left in the month. So we technically passed the turn. We're trending to roughly between 2,000 and 2,100. It'll be interesting to see. The second half of the month is a little slower, so it might be, in that 1,900. Like I'd put my error bars between 1,900 and 2,100, essentially at this point, which actually would be our goal was to basically hit 2,160, so we might not hit exactly our goal, but we're trending pretty positively as far as number of MRs from that perspective.
Okay. And
that's including community contributions, by the way. And then for average MRs per author, at the turn, we were at a little bit above 5. The one aspect is that yesterday's numbers got pulled, I think, at about 10 a.m. There was some really significant variance yesterday, and when the report got pulled. So when we've hit 5 at the middle of the month, we effectively have gone to around 9 MRs. So we're roughly in that range. We're probably not going to hit 10. But we're positively trending as well there. That'd be kind of the same ratio, which given our hiring rate is pretty. If we can maintain between 8 and 10 in a given month and continue to hire at the pace we are, I'll actually be pretty pleased, to be honest.
Okay.
Is the author like? How is that? Is that per like lab employee, or is that like we look at all the authors of MRs and divide by the total of MRs?
Unique authors in that given period.
Yeah. So, Josh, I hate to say I'm lying through statistics because that's not my intent here. If you want to really look at the development organization, we just pull what's been done by the MRs done by the development organization, divide by that. So it's not like that's probably the ratio you're looking for.
Okay.
Next question becomes what is the development organization? Well, it turns out that the development organization right now, if you look at it from a financial perspective, includes folks from like delivery and other teams that you're not necessarily managing with it. Mac's way of dealing with this, because he doesn't want to maintain a list, and I don't blame him for that, is he just looks through the authors and says if they're in GitLab, then I consider them around it, or we exclude community contributions, and then he looks through the author list, and then based on that, so like as an example, Docs is an author, and we don't necessarily push all teams to push at the same rate as development, but that's how we're using it. So in fact, in theory, if I really want to push development, they should be going to much higher rates from that perspective. We also have some authors like Stan, who he's basically done like 90 in a month, right? So like you just got to recognize that as well.
He's like a one-man
the distribution
development group.
The distribution is a little bit skewed, right? Like so, you just got to recognize that.
Cool. Yeah. And one quick follow on. Sorry, not to in the hiring charts under engineering, I guess that includes everyone in the engineering function. So that would also include the same people in release and all that stuff.
Correct. Yeah. So it's really literally anybody who contributed to the code base. Documentation's included in that. It's across the board.
UX,
including SID as well, if he makes it MR to CE.
Yeah. Any of the repos. Okay. Any of the repos that we considered. And there are a set of repos because it's not just CE and EE. Right, like distribution has a repo that we should be tracking work against because that's important.
Okay, yep, understood. Thanks.
So I want to go on record that this requirement was the original requirement, and I know as we hone in our maturity, I think we would need to slice by organizations later, but we don't have the capacity to do it in this iteration. So that would be something in Periscope where you have better mapping with engineers, and we can talk about it later. But right now, this is the best metric that we have.
Yeah, no, thanks. I was trying to understand. So I appreciate that. It seems like the best metric to me, given the current like iteration we're at.
Yep, and that everybody can contribute. That's how. Yeah. Okay. With that, I'll move on to the next data. The time to resolve isn't going down because we know that we have a long tail of bugs, but some slight uptick in actually the time to resolve customer bugs of S2 went up this month, and that I think that's something we need to call out here. Josh, I think you're joining this working group, and I think we should discuss more in the agenda on what are the next steps. We made some progress. We have some data. But I think now it's like empowering each group's. Mark Fletcher is working hard on migrating the labels, and we can just switch to group and stage labels instead, because right now we're kind of in a limbo state, and I appreciate all the patience. And Mark is going out on vacation next week as well, so it's graciously speeding this up while Remy is out. I want to give him kudos for that as well. With that, I'll stop sharing my screen and we can go through the agenda.
I'm up, but I was trying to cut and paste 2 items in there just quickly. One is a shout out to Lucas. Basically, he made a page where he has the big undefined, which is a way for managers to go look at their area and see who are the people who are currently not labeled from that perspective. So I think that's something that we need to probably think about is if there's any good way for us to codify it in some fashion. I know that there was also a script created by Rachel, but this looked like a kind of a convenient way for us to kind of go look at it. So Mac, maybe you and I can talk about whether
Sure.
there's a good home to find this, or if we just can do this in a ragtag fashion, or like what we think is the right way to think about this. But the other thing is with our new labels coming up, we probably want to make them aware of that, just so that it hopefully is an easy change for him from that perspective.
We have new automation coming in that's going to help NAC folks. I see this as like, it's a clear action item, so I do like it, but I think we need to kind of hone in on it. It's going to be a temporary thing where we get everything cleaned up, and then going forward it's just less of these. But yeah, I agree. We can tag up later.
Yeah, I think the challenge I've got more than anything else is like I like the report. The question is somebody want to be proactive on it? Should we have a status page around it? And the answer maybe is that we need both. But let's talk about it offline and kind of figure out, because it feels like those are the different ways we could potentially attack it. The other thing is at the end of the month, I also send out the issue where I basically say everybody go look and clean up, which it seems like that's been getting some pretty good responsiveness. So I haven't checked today to see how we're looking. Which I think Docs was working on theirs.
Okay. One thing I would call out here so that everybody knows, I don't think every groups are using the async retrospective. And I see that kind of evolving, being like the official structure, like you have managed and whatever groups, and they have their own retrospective. That's kind of like going to be the single source of truth. And if we want to pull mapping of engineers, that might be our way out, an effective one as well, because they're participating every retrospective. Okay.
Okay, yeah, that's not a bad idea. And then the next item was around just Periscope. Since we're moving that direction, I don't know if anybody had heard this, but essentially the data team's been working on this to get the issues over. My understanding is that they're actually at the end of the month, which is the end of the quarter, they're going to switch to focus on other areas than engineering for their data. But they currently have some dashboarding around this. The 2 aspects that they're working on right now is one is the ETL for MRs apparently is not up to snuff. So we may need to pull you and Tanya at some point maybe to either give them advice or potentially help. Though I think they have that issue in hand. The other one is I think it was more around the fact that they had basically when they were pulling stuff in, they had basically treated things as they didn't have AM and PM, so they didn't treat it as a 24-hour day. They treated it as everything was in the first 12 hours of the day, essentially. So apparently that issue is understood and is getting fixed as well. And then they're gonna back fill the data to fix both of those issues, is my understanding. So The other thing is that Emily was still getting inconsistencies between her data and our data. So at some point we may need to get pulled in as well to help reconcile that if she doesn't get to the same numbers.
Sure. I'm supportive of this because I know our execs want everything in one place and KPIs and everything. So we need data in Periscope. One thing I will call out is CSV export is not in Periscope, and I did some ground truth there. It's not there, and we need to construct our own mechanism to have that. I would suggest using the legacy quality dashboard for CSV export, and we need to find a way to reconcile this going forward. But that will be missing from Periscope.
Is that a simple? Well, I guess the question would be: is it as simple as doing a SQL query to table versus graph to get that same data? Okay.
That has to be built out. So every chart needs its own query that will allow us to export the CSV. And we have some fancy filters on our side where we call out if something is missing a throughput label. There's a special column for us, and that needs to be parity in Periscope if you want to migrate folks over there.
Can someone write up an issue on that, or like a brief?
There's one already.
Is there? Okay, all right. Can we get that issue somewhere in here so that I can then?
Okay.
That's a good call out though, because I do know a number of our managers are using it to export the CSV to look at it.
Yep. Can I do this afterwards? I do want.
Yes, that's fine. That's fine. Cool.
Okay. The next one is a big one. Kudos to Mark, who was on the call as well. We are dealing with two cases with the migration. The easy one is stick to one-to-one, where there's only one legacy team label, create. The other case is there's both create and manage. And I think this doesn't affect MRs as much. It's probably like 5% or less for merged MRs. So I don't see that as an issue. So we move forward with the mapping. It affects issues a lot, especially with create, plan, manage. And it's also because we had the label platform before, and those split into create and plan. I don't think we should be worrying too much on issues. I think that the main focus should be MRs. Would you be okay with having not 100% accuracy for those like 5% merged MRs? They may end up in the wrong group. If we go by automatic label inference, say if it was a feature label on that MR, we're just going to pick the group that corresponds to that feature. Is that okay? Or do we want exact mapping to whoever merged that MR, we get that group?
So right now you're saying that we have roughly 5% of them have multiple MR labels associated with it?
Multiple team labels on merged MRs.
Team labels or stage labels?
Team labels, because they haven't been migrated over.
Okay, so team labels being like the plan.
Plan, create, manage,
okay,
verify.
Yeah, I think people were using this in some cases when like one team was built, like, because there's this case at GitLab where teams are empowered to go fix other areas that they need. And so I think you have this case where, the secure team might go add a feature in plan and it gets both labels, for example, because both like the plan team should be aware, the secure team is working on it, it's in their backlog, so they're working on it. And I'm not sure how to fix that.
Well, we have a fix. It's to use scope labels for groups, and it's going to be fixed for the future. This is me letting everybody know, like for historical data, there will be some MRs going into the wrong group. And I think we should be okay with that. If not, let me know. We can't go by author as well, because those may be old MRs. That person may be in a different team, right? And I would say if it's only 5%, let's move forward. And that's a disclaimer that, okay, we know that it's not 100% mapped over. And what matters is this month and the next month and going forward.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That sound reasonable for everybody? Christopher's thinking. You're the stakeholder, so the most important decision.
Yeah, the problem I got is that like if we're training teams to look at their tables and effectively if it gets counted versus one or the other, that could lead to some difficult, like problematic scenarios. Let's put it that way. Yeah, let's continue to keep doing it that way. I think the way to fix that is probably label hygiene.
It is label hygiene, and I mean, they can fix it, right? If somebody works on it, they want to claim credit, just add your group label to it. And
well, it's not just add your group label, right? It's also remove the group label of somebody else, right? Potentially, which, like, I've always been a big fan of the team that's working on the issue should be the one that should get credit for it.
Me too.
Rather than the other way around. So
me too.
But let's go ahead and go with it, and we'll see if it becomes a problem. Like if I start hearing a number of folks saying, I don't feel like I'm getting my work adequately represented, then that's a problem. We'll go from there.
So disclaimer, for future MRs, we're going to go by authors. There's an issue for that. Like
if this is temporary, then that's even a better story.
Right. No, this is for historical MRs, to be clear.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then that's fine.
Okay.
Then that's not my concern is not like totally on board.
Okay. Got it.
And are we deleting the old team labels once this is done?
We're gonna. So if you were watching some of the conversations before, please don't delete the labels. We deleted enablement before and we lost data. Yeah. So we're gonna do the same thing we did for platform, is just add a duplicate prefix towards the end, and then in another 6 months, everything all good and done, we'll delete them. But right now we need them for reference.
Yep. Okay. Gotcha.
And I saw the thread that Mark Ponczak asked. I was going to reply, but yeah, that's my answer to that. Okay, the next one is the big one with your help, Josh. So time to resolve bugs are hovering at the same rate. I saw a spike up for some of the S2 customers coming in. The current plan is to equip EM and PMs with more tooling, more data. And the group-based triage package is coming in. We're blocked on migrating labels. So labels need to be migrated first, and we're going to unleash all the group and stage fine-tuning at the ground truth level. What else do you want to see, Josh? I know we talked about changing the priority SLOs and such that. I think this is the best place to discuss that before going to the product team meeting next week. And exit criteria that you mentioned.
So, as you know, one thing we're doing is in the product team call, we ask the PMs to sort of go back and look at their individual stages and groups, just to understand what's going on there. I think each stage is in a very different position. Plan, manage, create are very different than secure, monitor and other areas, and so they have very different problems. I wanted to try and have them take a look, understand like what is the ground truth and what's the problem that they're facing. I think that'll be interesting to see the results of that. The other thing we're trying to do is that we don't have good dashboards for all of the data I think that we need for the stage dashboards. So if you look at the stages here, like for example, under group access, I can't see like the bug created versus bug closed very easily. I have to kind of like try and figure out.
We can add those.
Yeah,
I've been shying away from adding it because we don't want to build more things. But if we need it and you give the approval, we can add it pretty easily. So that the charts that you see at the top level can be put here for that stage and group.
Yeah, so I think it'd be helpful to try and understand like their backlog. I guess some of it's already okay. So we had the bugs open per month, which is the bugs created per month, right? And that is okay. So that's there. And I'd be curious about the bugs closed, but
it's there.
It's there. But you kind of like do the math yourself a little bit, which is fine.
Do you want the area chart that's like open and closed, the one you saw that's in experimental?
I like that one. Yeah. So I like the one that was an area chart, but like I'm not sure if we actually need to go and implement it. If that makes sense. Like if you can sort of do the math in your head, it's just harder to like quickly understand like what the difference is, right? So
I think the other one you're asking is the total bugs, because that is at the top level and it's not at the stage and group level. And that kind of creates a sense of urgency, correct?
Yeah, so I think it sort of is though, right? Because the total bugs, which is in theory like based on by priority, it
Mm.
should is there. That's the bugs created per month. Oh, that's not cumulative though. So that yeah, so that's the one
So
that's
you want a cumulative.
I think that would also be an important one to know. So if I had to pick one, that was the one I would try and choose. That way PMs can understand um, like what's the trend line here? Are we falling further and further behind, or are we treading water, or what the deal is?
Okay.
And I think another ask would be to try and triage P2s. P3s are, I think, a bit of a lost cause right now because we just can't even get our hands on P2s. And so let's try and make sure those are groomed. I spot checked a few, and a few didn't seem like they were probably P2s. I asked people, and they actually removed the P2 label. And so,
okay, I'm fine with that. If you want to, if you're not gonna get it fixed and put it in a backlog and reevaluate it later.
it wasn't even that. It was like, hey, is this actually a P2? It's like, no, actually, it's not. And so they just, like one of them was an infra, and like it hadn't moved for like 6 months. It's like, is this really a P2? It's like, no, it's not a P2, and so it got removed. But I think the other thing is, yeah, just groom it. And then the other question, kind of, I think later on is, should we be more transparent and realistic about the priority labels? If we're assigning a P2 or P3 that we're not going to touch for 2 or 3 years, like there's, Kai brought up Wiki, there's P2 label, P2 bugs in Wiki. We aren't spending any time on Wiki. If that's the right decision to make, and I'm not sure it is, then why are they P2s and they've been open for 2 years?
Then I would say we need a workflow that there can be bugs that are not prioritized yet, but you put it in the backlog.
Yeah,
and so
it's sort of like, I have two concerns. It feels wrong we're a transparent company, and so our bug track is open, and we say it's a P2, we'll try and deliver it in 90 days, and it's 2 years old, right? And I think that frustrates people because it's like, what the heck is going on here? And so I think the one challenge I have is we actually have to go back and regroom them. We push them all to P4s because there's not a current priority, but we then lose sort of that prioritization signal if we ever go back and try and fix them. So that's the one thing I haven't figured out how to try and solve yet, if that makes sense.
So we talked about this on the side before, where what about introducing P5 and P6 with like 6 months and a year? It sounds like we need more levels here, right? And the areas that are mature, like create, plan, manage, they will have P5 and P6 because they have a bigger backlog, but like a new team that comes up, like they shouldn't have a P5 and P6. Like they should have like P2, P3s. I think that's a way to do it. But I'd love to hear from the rest of the group how you want to give more granular levers.
Yeah, it might be a good question to ask the teams in the next product call. So we give them a question where we ask them to have 2 weeks to kind of come back and kind of triage and take a look at this. And it might be a good one to just say, hey, would you like more P labels so you can be more accurate and still have some sense of priority and not have everything lumped into P4, which you then have to go back and re-triage to then go figure out like what is actually high priority in there.
Right.
Or maybe I guess you have the severity labels too, right? So the severity labels should also still help.
We're talking about 5 layers of P priority. It feels like we've broken something. That's kind of my reaction. Like there's 3 priorities and a de facto 4th one, which is no current plans, for this activity. Because if we're talking about anything more than 6 months out, like most companies are going to say, who knows when that's going to happen, right? And we just got to I'd almost feel like that's a better story.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think the one thing I didn't want to lose was the prioritization. So if you push everything to P4, and then you may have to go back and regroom it all. And like if we went back to Wiki and we have a team for Wiki now, they have to go back through and refigure out like where all the different like prioritizations of the bugs are. But I think the S labels could still serve as that purpose, and so maybe that's not actually a problem.
Yeah, but you have to go back and regroom that anyways, because like, anything that's 2 years old, the first thing I'm going to ask is, the first thing, this is the classic why software bugs take so much more effort to fix later on, which is the first thing you got to go figure out is you can still a bug that's, like you got to go reproduce the problem, and depending on who put it together, we may or may not have a easy reproducible situation, right? So like, what's the level of effort that we want to put associated with those types of bugs, right? Like,
True.
Should we be closing them out more aggressively? Like, if it's
that's my opinion. Like,
right, right.
Products got to decide that they want to put the manpower towards that effort, from the perspective of, like we could say to teams, we're going to push less on features this month, and we're going to go try to reproduce issues. And, you give it the 20-minute test. If you can reproduce it, great. Otherwise, you're closing it and asking the person who opened it originally to come back and reopen it if they still view it as a problem, right? Which is it's not a great user experience, but it's realistic in regards to the fact of, we spent some amount of time to try to reproduce your issue. We couldn't, and that's how most open source projects actually work is they'll very aggressively close bugs that are old. And if the person wants to open them, reopen them, then they have that opportunity, but they have to, in some ways demonstrate that it's reproducible on recent software.
Right. So it sounds like we need a bucket for, I'll take a look later. And it's either remove the priority or put it in a P4 and then just move those bucket in as time goes through. One call I would say is that we do not have the ability to filter by the absence of a label. So we need this in the product. Like if you want to look at, say, bugs with no P labels, there's no way around it other than the insights dashboard and like some API calls. Nothing else.
I think it's coming. The not is coming like next release, I think. Yeah. So very exciting. I have to drop. But this is a good conversation. So I think one outcome I'm hoping from the teams is that some of them will be like, we need to how they prioritize bugs. I think once we can present the information and ask them like, what do you plan to do about this? I think hopefully that's an outcome, and they're going to have conversations around resulting velocity of features afterwards. I think another good conversation is like, why is our bug trend going up faster than our merge requests are, or like test coverage and things like that? Should we invest more in automation or test coverage for the individual teams? So I'm hoping we have some of that data coming back. But I unfortunately did the drop. Sorry, I was a late add to this call, so I have another commitment. But I'd love to keep discussing like what to do about these bugs that are just long-standing and may not get addressed. And how do we be transparent about that and not? Yeah. So.
Okay, I'll add an extra.
Thanks for your time, Josh.
Yeah, thanks.
So when I worked at Puppet, we actually had a script and kind of a guideline that we had for issues that were super old, and even like prompts that we could put into the issues that were community contributions that, may not be reproducible anymore, maybe on an older version, maybe, just giving them guidelines saying, hey, we're going to close this out because we don't think this is an issue anymore. Please reopen if you are, if you're still concerned about this issue or this was fixed in a previous version. See if I can dig up the wording somewhere. And
we have that actually here.
Oh, do we?
Okay. Already, but we haven't been enabling it aggressively, especially where the bug has a customer label, like we want to be sensitive. But for issues that are non-bugs, Mark can speak to this. I don't know if he's on the call and it's kind of late on his day. But we do post, hey, it's going to be auto-closed in next week. And feel free to reopen it if you think it's an issue. And we do have that mechanism already. So if you want to enable it again or be more aggressive with that, it's there. We just need to switch it on.
Gotcha.
Shall we move on forward? I'm going to table this for next time. I think we need more discussions with Josh. Is that okay with everybody? Next one, I finally got back from Jeremy on grooming the remaining customer S1, S2. So I will close this out after this meeting. And it's the same story. He actually put this in a backlog and moved some of this to P3 or P4 instead. I think I added this in regards to triaging and using priority labels. I'll tag up with Josh. I think we need product and also maybe Lyle as well. Is there anyone interested in joining me for a recorded discussion on talking about priority. This is for the training, second part of the training video. Okay, I'll set this up for next week. Okay, last one. FYI, I'm deeply involved with finance. On their ask for historical data. I'm trying my best to shield this working group so we're not distracted. We can do that for now from quality, thanks to Zhenshin and Mark. One ask from Rama is for future cleanups. I think we should take a screenshot before the managers go in and start cleaning up so we know what the difference is. Christopher, do you have any ideas around that? I don't see any way how we can save a snapshot. Just I think taking a screenshot is probably a boring solution.
So what is he asking for a screenshot of?
So the screenshot of the throughput, you know, when you ask the engineering managers to go in and do cleanup for June and May, we want to know the before the cleanup and what after the cleanup looks like.
Why does he need to know that?
It's for the audit purposes from the issue I linked below.
So they just want to know how far we're off and then what we do to clean it up, because we're still off even after cleanup. So I'm trying to figure out like.
Right. He essentially wants to know like after the exercise, like how many were turned from undefined to a feature.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the boring solution is take a screenshot. And the problem is it's not very scientific is my concern. Right. Cause like the boring solution. But I'm trying to think how to say this. We need to make sure they understand this isn't scientific / financial. Meaning, you know, it's not exact, and it's not exact science from that perspective. But if he wants to see it, I mean, I guess the question would be: is where does he want that data posted for that? You know, that would be the question.
Okay.
Like, I'd almost rather push back and say we're not recording that at this point because we don't view it as important, and then you know, tell us what you know what from a financial perspective is going to be broken. I know he's asking for it, but I'd love to understand what it is about our labeling habits and hygiene that they need to understand.
Okay. Feel free to reply. We can tag up offline as well.
I think that's probably a good idea. Okay. I'll try to get involved in there.
Cool. Before we review the exit criteria, do you think we can shorten this meeting to half an hour? It sounds like we've been able to do. Okay. We'll do this round. And I don't think we made much progress on the exit criteria this week, so I'm okay skipping this if everybody is in agreement.
Yeah, I'm supportive of that this week.
Okay. The only thing sorry, go ahead, Christopher.
Let's plan to do it. Maybe we do it at the beginning of next week's meeting, though, before we go to topics. Just to make sure, because if we should cut it to half an hour, that'll make sure that we're focused on it, because we want to still try to clean this up in the first 2 weeks of August, right? So. Or get to closure in the first 2 weeks of August. So.
Okay. Cool. I do have some updates. I'll just update it async and give updates to folks. It's the trash customer S1, S2, and that's considered done this week.
Okay.
Anything else?
The 2 hypotheses I'm still working on.
Sorry about that. I think we skipped you.
That's all right. Well, there's nothing to talk about for number 8 on the size of MRs, because I'm still waiting for that data to get imported into Periscope. It got pushed back to the latter half of July, so maybe to be done by next week. for number 9, developers with less tenure at GitLab are still learning and are less productive than those that are more tenured. I showed you all the graphs last week slowly as they loaded. I linked them out to a doc to make it easier to view. 6 months trend, the 6-month graphs go a trend of growth over time, which is good. And then Christopher asked me during the last meeting to show a 12-month trend to see if there was like a plateau, a leveling out when they kind of stabilized. And I didn't see any evidence of stabilization. It just got wacky the further out you went. So, I mean, I think the hypothesis is true, but I haven't found anything that definitively says, yeah, after X number of months, the majority of our developers kind of stabilize and hit a trend on where they are pushing through and closing MRs. So I'm not sure what else I should do on this issue, if anything, or this hypothesis, if anything. If anybody has any ideas, I'm open to listening.
I'm looking at the graphs, by the way, just really quickly.
Yeah, and we can chat about it asynchronously and follow up next week.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
Cool.
Okay then. I'll upload the recording and then send out MR to update the small progress we made. And see you all next week. Thank you.